Morning. Today I want to talk about a conversation I had with a friend about kind of life transitions and what to do and how do we purposely choose our life and have a reason to wake up every day if it's not centered around job, your your identity at work. Um, So I'm Holly. I'm your transformational guide. I'm here to share everything about living your pleasurable life, finding out what that is, and removing the obstacles in the way of having that. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about this conversation and some concepts and tools that I've learned along the way because I've lived a pretty unique life. And that's the thing that I love sharing about the most. So there's going to be some personal story in here along with the tools. Anyway, let's get into it. I was talking with a friend the other day, and he was telling me how Elon Musk says that the workforce is going to change drastically because of AI and robots taking over and whatever. Um, so humans, people, are going to have to find things to fill up their time to create purpose for their lives because their job is maybe not going to exist and maybe won't need to work to fill up every day. So it's true, like in society that we live in, our purpose, our identity is tied to our job. Um, typically, typically. Um, and what happens like when you lose that job or you don't have that identity anymore, then who are you? And he told me that he pointed out something that I really like that he saw. Uh, he said that people are going to have to start learning to live like me. And I forget sometimes how unique my life has been. Um, and it's true. This is something that I had to discover really early. Who am I without my work identity? And how do I find purpose? And what makes me wake up every day? I had a really easy answer to that once I lost my job. I was mom, and I fully dove into that role. But let me get into a little bit of background. First, this concept, this idea came, and then I've been thinking about it for a few days, and the algorithm gave me this cool term this morning that I just looked up, and so I'm not going to pretend to understand the full the full dynamic of this term and its origination. But when I looked it up, I'm just going to go ahead and read it. It's called Ikigai, or I think it's called Ikigai. I don't know if I said it right. Um, but basically, it's a Japanese concept that translates to a reason for being. It comes from iki, to live, and gai, worth or value, representing the source of value in your life or the things that make your life meaningful and worth living. So there's two pillars, the source, and that's activities, people, passions that bring value to your life. And then there's the feeling, the sense of satisfaction and joy you experience because of those sources. Like in Western culture, this has been turned into like finding your purpose in life and creating money off of that purpose. So, um, there's four questions to ask, and that's what do you love? What are you good at? What the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And that's what you explore in order to discover your own ikigai. But in traditional sense, it's supposed to have four core values, and it's not based off of creating your purpose fully, like creating a monetary gain from your purpose. It's more like the core principles are starting small, focusing on the details and taking pride in small tasks, releasing yourself, accepting who you are and letting go of the ego, harmony and sustainability, connecting with others and working together, the joy of the little things, appreciating daily sensory pleasures like a morning cup of tea or a walk or hand holding with a loved one, being in the here and now, finding a meditative flow and staying present. Ultimately, your ikigai doesn't have to be grand or career or mission driven. It can simply be your family, gardening, a morning hobby, or the quiet knowledge that your day has meaning to you. And to be honest, I love that I just discovered this term uh, because both ways is exactly how I live my life. And um, it's fun. It's always fun to have a term or know that this is a concept that exists on purpose in some cultures, because in American culture, living from your joy is not accepted. It's not encouraged. Usually we tell our kids, do something you love, but we need them to make the money, right? They need to support and sustain their life in a um, culture, a capitalist culture. So we say do what's fun, but we don't really encourage it because we want them to also be successful, right? We want ourselves to be successful. And in our culture, finances tend to equal success in the eyes of many. So, um, following your joy is something that comes later, right? What later than you're not accustomed to finding your joy. So this concept, like it wasn't easy for me to get to this point, or I haven't always lived my life from a place of adding pleasure and joy. In the beginning of my life, it was really hard. And that joyful living was not a concept that I had in my world. This concept came from years of struggle and then deciding one day that I could have something different, that I learned that choice was an option. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, a little bit of backstory. Um, when I was 25, I woke up one day. I went to work. It was very early. I was in the army, and I got up. I went and I did a little bit of yoga, and then I got ready and I went to PT, ran 6 miles, went to the gym, lifted some weights. Um, Then the same day, lunchtime, I go home on my lunch break and have lunch. And then I ride my motorcycle back to work. And on the way back to work, I'm going through an intersection and the light turns yellow. And I know that somebody's in the left turn lane. So I look to them and I just knew that they were going to turn. So they came at me head on and hit me. And that's when my life completely changed. Um, at that point, my daughter was 9 months old and, learning to crawl, playing, being playful and movable now. She's gaining momentum in her mobility. And at that moment, I lost all of my momentum in mobility. I I think 9 months later, I was discharged from the army because of the injury that I sustained to my back. And yeah, I first couldn't move. And then, so I lost the autonomy of my body, the fitness of my body that I took great pride in. I was obsessed, unhealthily obsessed with my weight and my figure. I was at that point, I did the 3 workouts in the one day because I was trying to recover from having a baby. And I wanted to be my healthy Iron Soldier self again and be competitive and do well in the army. I um and feel good and healthy in myself. I wanted the confidence back from before I had my daughter. Um, So I lost the autonomy of my body. I needed help to do things in my life. I couldn't move, I couldn't work out. So that joy was gone instantly in the accident. And then 9 months later, I lost my job, which I was actually really okay with. Um, because another fun fact and tool, ask and you shall receive, is true. We just don't get to decide how we receive what we're asking for. And we may not always like the how, but if you're truly willing to receive what you're asking for, it will come. Because when I had my daughter, I did not want to be in the army anymore. I didn't. I didn't want it. And I had asked to get out. Um, I had no idea that I was going to be the kind of mom that I turned into. And I didn't know when she came out that I was going to go into such a protective state that I did not ever want to go to work and leave her. So I had asked to get out of the military when she was like 3 months old, and they wouldn't let me because, well, I don't know. I was married at the time and they said I had a family care plan and they just wouldn't let me out. And they knew that I would have to get some kind of job anyway. And I was already a staff sergeant in the army doing well for myself. Um, so they didn't want to let me out, but I didn't want to deploy. I'd already deployed twice. I didn't want to leave my daughter. There was like a fear in it. And I really did not want to be in the military. Um, So I just, that's what I really wanted. And it lived in my world, even though they said no. So I embraced it and I was going to get back in shape and I was just going to do good at the army until it was time to get out. Um, but then this accident happened that changed my world and actually gave me the thing that I had asked for, wrapped up in a package that sucked. It sucked in the beginning. It sucked for a few years until I learned that I could make it not suck because I was in charge. We forget that we're in charge of creating our world. Um, right now, you have exactly the world that you're creating. You've chosen it and you're creating it. Every conversation you have, every relationship in your life, every, like the job you have, everything you do in your day-to-day life, the world you've built around you, the house, the where you live, everything is a choice that you've made. And you can choose again. If you don't like it, you can choose again. If you don't like it, you can now realizing it's your choice, you can embrace it because you chose that. And you can say, like, do I want to change it? No. Cool. Then I should be grateful for what I have. Or I could do maybe take the shit off. I can do a little bit more to create a gratitude in what I have. And I'm very far off track, I think. But um when I got kicked out of the army, then I mean, my finances changed drastically. So I lost my body. I lost my job, the title of staff sergeant as a 25 or 26. I think I was 26 when I was discharged. Um, I had a pride in already being a staff sergeant at that age. And I mean, I think I got a staff sergeant at 23, right before I turned 24, maybe. Um, anyway, that's a big deal. And I took pride in being that person that worked that hard and earned um this position. And yeah, that was a loss and a hit to my ego. And then I lost my finances. And so as someone, a woman, like who had always taken care of herself, um, that was important to me to take care of myself. I didn't know or have an idea of being provided for. Um, I never thought men would ever take care of me in any kind of way. And so it was really important for me to take care of every aspect of my life and living for myself. Um, so my finances changing was huge. And all of these things gave me a sense of um, not feeling safe, being vulnerable. I wasn't going to be able to take care of myself and my daughter in the same way. Um, yeah, I was married, but it was not a good marriage. It was toxic, and we were together because the military paid us more to be married, and I wanted to have a family, even though my daughter's dad was not in a healthy state and able to be present in the way that a dad or husband needed to be. I really just wanted to keep us together to have that idea of security. It was just an idea, it was not a reality. Um, but so I didn't have that support. I didn't have the support of any of these things. I couldn't move right. Couldn't, my bills were gonna pile up. Like all of this safety was attacked. And then I had no identity at the time. I lost my identity also because it was very tied to being this independent, self-sufficient woman who had a great job and worked hard um and then who was I? I was a mom. And so I fully embraced that identity and I loved every minute of it. But it took me a minute to also get over the fact that I lost every other part of me. Like all those things kind of died away slowly. And so I had to recenter myself on my new reality. And that was hard. I went through depression for sure, not just because of all of those things, but because then I'm a mom and a single mom at this point because when my body got hard to deal with, I needed help. And that husband who wasn't able to be supportive to himself, even couldn't be supportive in helping me in my everyday and helping with the baby. So then it became me, my broken body, and my baby, and no job. So there's all of these things that I had to learn to create a new life with. And it was hard. It was very hard. And I've seen other people go through this, maybe not in the same context as me, but I watched grandparents retire and then sit in depression. Like you think you want to sit and watch TV after you retire and relax, or maybe you have the idea of going to travel, but maybe the money's not there to allow you to do it. So I see a lot of people get trapped in just being in the house. Um, and I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time in the house with my daughter. There wasn't a lot of, like, I didn't feel safe. Different things came up when I was a single mom. And I don't want to get too far into that story, but there was a feeling of unsafety because of like being deployed or just the childhood that I had, where I wouldn't leave the house after dark. So, and I didn't actually take her out all that often. We just stayed in the house. So, staying in the house, what is there to do? Read books, play games by myself with a baby, watch TV, sit and wallow in your self-pity, or what do we do? Everybody got a taste of that during COVID. What do you do when your job is no longer available in your identity? And I saw so many people dive into depression, lose themselves in the bottle or other substances, um, because they didn't have a purpose or they didn't know how to deal with family members. That's another part. Um, when we go to work every day and we have that identity and we have that purpose and we have the other people to talk to, we don't spend so much time at home with our significant other or our kids. And so when we don't have the job, we're spending way too much time maybe with people that we don't have people outside of our home to talk to. So the people in our home are now getting all of us. And sometimes that's too much for us to share, for us to spend our time with, for us to have all of them. It's just too much, and we're not used to it. We didn't build a life. Um, we didn't build a life based on with them knowing how they were fully and being willing to spend all of that time with them. So that's another thing to add on top. So what do you do when you don't have your identity? What do you do with yourself when your identity is so tied to what you do, and the pride from having that purpose is taken and you lose your identity? And this is what I had to discover. At first I didn't drink, but because of the injury, I had pain meds, and then I was on insomnia medication and anxiety and depression pills at one point. Until my daughter was 4, my job was basically going to the VA hospital to get every evaluation and test and do all those things. And they love to hand out medicine. So I was taking all kinds of pills and um, just to get through my day. And the only thing that I could do was be present with my daughter in the day. And we took really long naps, which was great. My daughter's a great sleeper. So I got that. I got to be able to take naps and have a recovery time in the middle of every day, which is important. And I didn't know that that was important until it was available and I needed it because of medications and pain, like constant chronic pain. What do you do when your body's in chronic pain? Right? We find our coping mechanisms. But then I realized that I didn't want to live like that. Like it got to the point where the sleeping pills weren't helping me sleep. And I was up all night long. And I think for about before getting out of the military and after, I think it's 10 years of having chronic insomnia. So there was this whole package of things. And I see a lot of people go through this when they're in their transition from retirement. Um, Parents, grandparents, and a lot of people actually end up going to get a second job or going right back to the job that they left because they can't really find their joy and happiness. Not that they have joy and happiness in that job, but at least they have a purpose and a way to feel that they are doing something. Um, but what if we could find our joy outside of work and our identity outside of work? So, like, what are all the identities that we have available, and which one gives us the joy and purpose? So, I'm coming back around to this term of ikigai and how I learned to get there. And it's all based on the concept of becoming aware that you're living from this place of not having, you know, joy in your life and living every day in a pattern of processes or routine that was built around someone else's agenda and someone else's idea of having purpose and being a useful person in society. But what if life is not all about being a useful purpose in society or a useful person in society? And your purpose can be just to enjoy your life. Um, so at the point when I was taking pills, I also had started having like a glass of wine or two every night just to try to sleep. And one morning I woke up, had a headache, and I couldn't really be present with my daughter, which was the thing that I was good at and the identity that I had taken on. And I just was struggling to be awake and present, and going to the park didn't have any joy in it. Like I got so much joy out of being my daughter's mom. We did so many fun things, even though I had the pain. And even though I was on the medications, I just was able to be there. But when I had the 2 glasses of wine and took the pills and they didn't wear off, and I woke up with that headache and achy body, and I just couldn't do it that day, I lost that identity also. Like I'm not being that fun, joyful, present mom that I really wanted to be. And so I had to look at myself and like see what I was doing and what could I do differently. And luckily I found a podcast that changed my world, and I just started I learned this concept like we can have something different than what society says, and we can have something different than what we're choosing or been taught to choose or has been ingrained in us since we're kids. You go to school, you get your job, you work, and you create a life. And then when you're old enough and you have the money, then you can stop working and start to enjoy what you created in life. But let's be real, right now, that retirement is looking really far off, right? A lot of people are having to push it back because the economy has changed so drastically. The way of the world has changed so drastically. Our kids are struggling right now. I have a teenage daughter who's about to start college, and she wasn't sure, like, do you want to go to college? Because college isn't giving you the same thing as it used to. Creating your world, going to work every day, and um spending your life building is not giving you the same opportunities, not giving us the same opportunities that we had. And I'm saying that as a person who hasn't worked, like, don't come for me. I haven't worked or had to work since I was 26. That's when I got discharged. Um, but I fought really hard for the benefits that were available to me. It wasn't something given. That was my job, was getting benefits that should be available to veterans, especially when they're discharged because of mental illness or injury. Um, but a whole nother tangent I could go on. Um, but I was able to sustain our life. This is the gift that came out of this accident and everything. So every trauma, this might be hard to hear, but every trauma and every difficult life experience we have typically has an outcome that we can lean into and see the gratitude in, and it's actually adding something of value to our life once we dive in and really heal and look back and say, oh, without that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And without that accident and getting out and them telling me I couldn't get out, I wouldn't have had the awesome life that I had being present, like a single stay-at-home mom with my daughter, because I learned how to make that disability money stretch for us and give us a cool life, a really cool life. Um, but it wasn't until I figured out that I had choice. So becoming aware of what you're doing in your daily life, and and is it bringing you joy? Is it is the life that you've created right now happy? Do you have the relationships that you want? Is the job creating the finances that you need to create happiness? Is it creating joy and being present in it, like doing the work? Is that fun, joyful work? um yeah, are the activities you're doing in your daily life bringing you joy? And if they're not, um this is where that concept comes in. What does bring you joy? And that's what I started learning from. What I started questioning, like, I couldn't move my body the same way I used to. And so I wasn't really moving it much at all, except to be present with my daughter, go to the park, follow her around, active in my everyday life as much as I could be. But I didn't really explore what could I do with this new body I was in. So whatever state your body is in, what is something you can do to move it? And I learned that I could walk. I could ride a bike, kind of, not on big hills. Um, I couldn't really Zumba. I couldn't lift weights the same way. I could lift light weights, but if I moved the wrong way, you know, so I didn't really have the yoga, no running for sure, but I could walk. So I started adding walking into my day. And every day I walked and I listened to a podcast. And the podcasts is what brought new concepts and ideas into my world. And if you want to do some type of transformation, I highly recommend finding um, a video to watch that gives you ideas of how to improve and change your life, or podcasts to listen to while you go walking. Um, or a book, audiobook. I listen to audiobooks. What single mom has time to sit down and read books? I never did, but I could listen to audiobooks while I walked. And there are so many great transformational audiobooks to listen to. So that's what I started doing. I added in positive things to listen to or watch. We didn't actually watch TV in our home until my daughter was about 8 years old. Um, we're a Montessori unschooling Waldorfy family, so we had a different concept of I didn't know that was coming. I grew up in a really basic public school home, and then I rebelled against the system. So I think that that's just part of my character, rebelling against the system and doing things that are different. So I didn't want to take the drugs that the VA was giving me. I didn't want to drink. I had a bad past with alcohol addiction, um, myself and family members. So I changed a lot in being a parent, but those things weren't bringing me joy. And when I started leaning on them, that's when I realized I needed to change. So when you're leaning on habits or um, routines or crutches that are are detrimental to your health, life, and living, that's when it's a great time to start questioning what you're creating in your life. Um, and so I started to live from a place of questioning what can I do differently to have a different outcome in my morning. Because if the thing that I want to do, like what is the goal that you have? Is it to retire and travel? Is it to have the relationship that you've always dreamed of having? Is it the sex that you've always dreamed of having? What is the dream? And then how do you get there? How do you get there and how do you do it in the most joyful way possible? So I really started to explore that. And first, and you know, when it comes to change and creating the life you want, or like you can ask and receive and you want to choose it, but in choosing it, there's baby steps. And so my baby steps included like learning how to move my body, number one. And that's been a practice ever since. I think it's been maybe when my daughter was 4, so 14 years of asking myself daily questions. Because what wakes me up in the morning? That's one of the things. What's going to wake you up and get you out of bed and have you living a life that brings you joy and creates a purpose that feels good to you? Because that's what we're talking about here. Um, what if you don't have your job and identity from that? How do you create your identity? Who do you want to be? And how do you want to live your life? And what's going to make getting up in the morning fun, joyful, and purposeful to you? And that's how I started living every day. So I started to wake up and go for walks, and that brought me joy. Push her in a stroller, or if somebody was at the house, which was not very, very often, um, I go for my walk and like have them watch her. Uh, so another time when I had to really question myself, which is right around the time that this happened, is she had actually started going to preschool, which is very hard for me. It's very hard because of I needed to protect her. So I needed to learn, and I think that's why I added the wine in. I think I missed that part of remembering the sequence. Um, she had gone to school, and so I had lost that everyday purpose of all day I'm with her, entertaining her, and being present. And so that day I woke up, headache. It was hard to get her to school, and I couldn't be present with her after school that day to play with her. And then I didn't know what to do with myself. I was just feeling crappy the whole time she was at school, and that's not what I wanted for myself. I wanted to rest and relax and recuperate and get through the stresses, feeling okay. And that wasn't okay. So when she was at school, these walks became so good for me to, have time for myself to clear my mind and put in these healthy ideas of who I want to be or just the idea that I had a choice of who I wanted to be. So, who do you want to be outside of your job? Who are you outside of your job? Are you outside of being mom? My favorite identity so far, one that I'm struggling with right now in this life transition, is being Mayla's mom. Hi, I'm Mayla's mom. We introduce ourselves that way for so long, and I still do it. Um, and that's my identity. I am Mayla's mom. It's my favorite one. But who am I now that my daughter's in college? I'm still going to always be Mayla's mom. And who am I now that I'm me with freedom? I don't have a job unless I'm creating it, which I'm starting to. Um, who am I now? And I think that's why this concept is so right in front of me, because I'm at another transition point where I'm learning, who am I now again at this age after all the things I've been through in my life? Who do I want to be? What do I want to create for myself? What's going to create the greatest joy? And I have a history of getting to explore those concepts, so it's really fun and joyful for me to do that. But I recognize in that conversation when he said, people are going to have to learn to live life like you and figure out what gets them out of bed, that I have done it differently. And so here are the things. It's becoming aware of your current situation. Who are you being? What are the identities that you have created for yourself? And what brings joy out of those? Um, is it being a parent, a husband, a wife, um, that the job title, whatever that is? Are you good at a sport? Like, what actually brings you joy, and which identities do you have that really fulfill you? And if all of those identities are stripped away, then who are you as the being, and what would you do with yourself now? Because that's kind of where we are. What would you do yourself when you have to start from scratch? What if you just lost your marriage and you're no longer a husband or a wife? Right now, I'm not really playing the role of mom the way that I used to. Who am I now? What do I want to do to fill up my day? Um, and what brings the joy? How do you discover those? So you could pick up a hobby, pick up a book that gives you concepts for learning, listen to podcasts, pick up a new art form. What what is what's some type of art? What is something that you've always wanted to learn but never had the time for? That's like when people retire, then they I've seen a lot of people think, oh, I've always just wanted the time to just lay on the couch and watch whatever I want, or in the recliner. I've seen multiple family members just like become recliner. I can't even call it a couch potato because they're in the recliner. They do whatever they're gonna do, and then they sit in the recliner and they don't move and they watch TV. And then they go to sleep. Like they eat, sleep, recline, watch TV. And then they end up going back to work because, whoa, the purpose in that runs out really quick. The joy in it runs out really quickly. Um, Or, if you're like that and you really love it, but your partner doesn't, then the relationship struggles really quickly because that partner is really active, out living, whatever, and they want you with them, but you want to be on the couch. So this can be relationship ruiners right there, is not knowing what your purpose is, what your desire is, and how you're creating. So if you're at a point in your life where your relationship is falling apart because you have different values, then you can also explore this with a partner. What creates purpose as a couple? What would bring joy to you each to do together so that you can purposely add that in as part of your identity? If you're going to stay as a couple, how do you add joy to each other's lives while you're following your own joy. Because that reclining might be really joyful to some, but I've seen it make people so depressed that they lose their health, they lose their happiness, they lose their relationship, and then they go back to work. And then they still don't have happiness because they didn't love their job, but at least it gave them something to do in their day. So what can you fill your day with that has the happiness? It's like the number one thing to explore. And it could be hobbies. Um, Traveling to a new place. You may want to fix up your home to make it a more joyful place to be. Um, but yeah, living from these ideas, and every time we start to explore the idea of who am I now? Uh, the idea that you are choosing and creating your life, or what brings joy, and that you can actually have that. Some things come up, and like limiting beliefs. Because I didn't always have the concept that I could choose. I didn't always have the concept that life is supposed to be joyful and pleasure filled. Um, so triggers come up, limiting beliefs come up. I don't deserve it. I'm not worthy of that. Um, my wife doesn't want to do that, so I can't do that. Or um, this is the life I've created, and this is what gives me purpose, and that's the only thing that I can see and have. Like we get really focused in this tunnel when life is actually this big, and the things that create our life and joy is our body, our health, knowing how to move and feed the body, your own body, because everybody moves and can eat differently for their own health. So learning your body, what brings you joy, what is a movement that you like doing and will sustain doing. Um, and then your finances. Are your finances able to support you in your life, your career or hobbies or anything? And this is how I dove into transformation work, is I realized that it was really fun to learn all these new concepts and apply that to myself. And then I realized it's really fun to share it with others. So I've been learning about transformation for 14 years and sharing it for about 6 as a coach and healer. Um, I've learned so many different things because the hobby became like my daughter's in school. So when she was at school, I learned. Learning is very fun for me. So I learned about um, and you can call this a hyperfocus in autism or ADHD. I'm a little bit on the spectrum, but I really dove into um, the world of transformation and natural healing because I didn't want to feel in pain anymore. If there's something in your life that you don't like how it's going, when you dive in and you learn how to shift that thing, typically that brings you a great purpose because you're healing your own life. You're changing something that was hard for you, and you're learning how to overcome that and how to help others. Like others find purpose in they wanted to travel and they felt stuck. So then they just learned how to move abroad, and then they created a life and purpose out of being a move abroad coach. There's so that's the part of the ikigai. It's first discovering. Like I think that I first learned the concept in the little everyday joys. What brought me joy? Taking my daughter to the park, watching her ride horses, um, meeting friends and other moms and talking to them and having conversations while we listen to the kids be joyful on the playground. Those little things brought me joy in my everyday life. So, what are the little things that bring you joy in your everyday life? And what enhances that? And like once you get the little bits of joy and realize that you can have that and embrace that, then it can be a little bit bigger. What brings you the big pleasures of living? Like, is it travel? Is it learning a new thing? Is it teaching someone something? And then once you have these concepts and your life is fully joyful, then it's that more westernized version of the ikigai. Then you can create a new identity, a coach, a mentor, a create your new business, a business owner, an entrepreneur. But it's a purpose and identity that actually means something to you outside of that job, and it's bringing you the joy and supporting others. That's that westernized version of the ikigai is turning it your passion and your joy into monetized business in some way to create more joy. But maybe it's not. Maybe the joy is something that I just chose. I for a little bit chose to lean into van life. And my daughter and I were houseless for 4 months. And I learned how to do that life. And that was fun for me. And it really had to do with minimizing the finances needed for my everyday living. And so it doesn't have to be all centered around money and purpose, but you can create your purpose. It can be centered around just finding the happiness and being around the people that you love. It can also be centered around creating actually a different work-life identity that actually brings you joy and pleasure. So, um, yeah, what is it that would bring you joy? If you're sitting in a transition right now, have you gotten honest with yourself about the identities that you're holding on to and how many of them serve you and which ones can you let go of? Because part of this is that like the limitations that come up is the letting go of our identities, like actually letting that part of you die because the purpose in it has died. The time to do it has ended. And so that part of you has to move on, which is a little bit of grieving. So you may run into the grief as you um, explore uh, this idea. And there is a grieving process of letting go of these parts of yourself that are no longer available or no longer serving you. Um, but in that space of loss and grieving, you can embrace the concept like, wow, now I get to be and do different things. Maybe something that I've always wanted to do, but didn't have the space for or couldn't relate to because I was fully involved in this aspect of myself. And so who do you want to be now? In that space, in the letting go, you're gonna create a lot of space in yourself. And that can be really uncomfortable. Because we tend, like, if you're a workaholic, the reason you're workaholicing is because there's something in yourself that you don't want to sit with. There's something in your world outside of work. Anytime we have an addiction or a place we're putting too much or a lot of our focus in, it's either because that's our purpose and our joy and we're living from that and awesome, amazing, keep doing that. Or it's because we're avoiding something in our the other parts of our everyday living, which could be a lot of times it's in relationships. Um, Other times it's like that inner turmoil within ourselves of things that we don't want to look at. Childhood traumas from adulthood, the things that we've lost and haven't really grieved. um, Avoidance is real, and that identity and diving in gave us somewhere to hide from ourselves. So these things, that's what's coming up. That's what's causing the difficulty and the transition. And this is when it's great to reach for those books, podcasts, therapy, coach, someone who can guide you through that transition to find the joy, but also to help you overcome the obstacles in the way because the obstacles come. When I like to say I'm a pleasure coach and I live a pleasurable life, but it's not full of sunshine and rainbows. Every time I want to lean into something, a big desire, a new way of being, a new identity, there's always something that comes up that's like, ugh, that's kind of like, no wonder I'm not living that because in order to get there, I have to look at this hard thing. And we tend to let those hard things stop us. But the hard thing can be dissolved in a second with the right support, the right concept, the right idea, just the concept of ikigai existing can change your whole world. Oh, I can live from joy. What's happy for me? That's all you need to spark a completely different life. But sometimes you need guidance and support. So the right support, without the right support, we have trouble getting to that next step. So find that support that you need in getting there if you're having trouble. And there's so many levels of that. Uh, um, and sometimes it can just be talking with a friend. Have that conversation to you can remind yourself, like, oh, I actually have these parts of me that I've let go dormant because I was focused over here. But I want to bring that part alive. And then you can. So when you get to that point and you recognize that part, ask yourself, like, who am I today? This is a question that my daughter and I woke up with. Who am I today, and what grand and glorious adventures am I willing to have and receive today? And because we had the time and space and freedom, it was, what do we want? What do I want to do today? If you're recently retired, um, and you have space and you don't have a plan, then every day you could just wake up and say, what would bring me joy today? I've done that on grand scales. Like we were traveling in our RV and parked at the beach in California one day. And I said, what do we want to do today? We didn't really have an answer, but somebody had invited us across the country to a game in Georgia. And so we decided, okay, we want to go to Georgia. That's a huge choice to make because I drove over to Georgia in like 2 or 3 days, 2 days, I think. Um, and then we had a different life and we went on a different trajectory. But we're still living the same life, just in a different place, doing different things. And that was the choice. And I had the ability to do that and the space and the time and luckily the money at that point, um, which was awesome. But without the idea of I can literally have and do whatever I want. And getting to the point where I actually allowed myself to choose that, then I'd still maybe be just like holed up in my house, hiding away, being sad, and not knowing that I had choice. But so you could wake up. Literally, it's the easiest thing to wake up and write it on your mirror, put a post-it, um, etch it into the steam. What would bring me joy today? What would I like to do? And it can be so simple as, oh, it'd be really fun to go walk around the lake and buy myself a new plant and do that. And the next thing, what would bring me joy today? What would bring me joy in this very moment? Today I woke up and what would bring me joy is talking about this. So I wanted to come on and share this concept of living your life from joy and becoming the idea that of like the identity of yourself that creates the life that you love with the people that you love, doing the things that you love, um, and getting over all the obstacles in your way so that you truly have the joy of living. Because you can have that. It's a reality that exists for everyone. You just have to choose it and then take the steps to get there. Okay. So please, if you stay with me this long, thank you. I know I go off on tangents. Let me know how this video resonates with you in the comments, and please like and subscribe so that I can talk with you again. Okay. I hope that this brings a lot of joy to your life, and tell me about that joy. Please share it. Okay. I hope you have a great day, a joyful day filled with pleasure. Bye bye. I'll see you next time.